Hello again, friends. Welcome to another episode of the No Small Stories podcast. I'm your host, Haleigh Overseth, and my co-host, Shane Fisher, and I sit down this week with Mike Fleming. Mike is a sculptor, and he has some fun stories of what inspired him to become a sculptor, some of the animation and opportunities that he's had and even declined. You might not believe it. I do hope that you enjoy this conversation that we have, and thanks for joining us. So welcome to our fourth, I believe, episode of the No Small Stories podcast. Already. And we have Mike Fleming here with us today, who is a sculptor. Hello, Mike. Hi. Do Mike, introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about what it is that you do.
My name is Mike, and I am a sculptor, like you just were saying. I specialize in sculpture, clay animation, and pottery, and those are all things that keep me busy.
So I live clay animation too. I don't talk more about that. What do you mean when you say clay animation?
Like Wallace and Gromit or California Raisins or like the old Pizza Noid. Like
Celebrity Deathmatch.
Yeah, well.
Oh my God. Yeah. I forgot about all of those things. I'm so glad to be reminded. I love those things.
Yeah, they're fun and they're time consuming, and it's fun because you get to sculpt, and like every single frame you sculpt a little bit more, or you move a puppet and then take pictures, and then over 24 frames you get a second of footage.
Oh man.
So it's time consuming, but it's really rewarding. It's magic, really.
Yeah, I love it. I did stop motion animation a little bit when I was in film school back in the day. Good Lord, let's not talk about how long ago. But yeah, so like I can appreciate how much effort and it really is super time consuming because you need 24 frames to get 1 second of footage, and but it's so very cool when you're done and when you can see it moving. It is a lot of fun. So how did you get started in just sculpting and working with clay, and how did you stumble upon this skill that you've developed?
Well, I'll have to say when I was a little kid, the first movie I went to see in a movie theater was Jurassic Park, and
nice.
That had a big impact on me. And I my parents also had a Sega, and they had the Jurassic Park video game.
Nice.
And inside that video game, there's a bunch of stop motion dinosaurs. And
okay.
It was really cool to see that. And so my dad had a camera. It wasn't like a film camera. It was just like you did home movies and stuff on it. So it didn't have
those like old school, like with the VHS that you put in there.
Yeah.
Like, so them big things. Yeah.
It didn't have the ability to take single frames, so I would just try to hit stop and record as quick as possible and take like 3 seconds of footage for each frame. Or so that's kind of how I got my start. And then I was using like toys and stuff as puppets or like model kits, and then eventually I was like, man, I could like start sculpting stuff. And my dad was big into model kits as a kid when he was growing up, so he had some of those. And then I got into building the models, but oftentimes I couldn't paint them, and I didn't really like the sculpts, so I would like try to change them and stuff and add stuff and add different elements and just customize them. And then that started me sculpting, and then it got me into animation, and then I just kept building all that whole skill set.
So about how old were you then when you started doing this? So, like, you've been playing with this for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, probably.
I'm not trying to age you or anything.
Something.
Wow, no. Really? That is 7, so cool.
Yeah, when I seen Jurassic Park, I think I was like 5 or 6 or 7, something like that. But
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of how I got my start in the sculpting side of things. And then pottery, I've just recently been dabbling with in the last few years and teaching myself how to transfer the detail of my sculpture work into water-based clay and have that carry over, and then is able to be fired and then glazed and can actually be microwaved or put in a dishwasher or in an oven or whatever. So that's been really challenging.
Yeah, I've seen the things that you have on your, social media, the mugs and the different like characters that you put on like the mugs and stuff. I think that's really cool. I
Yeah,
love so I'm
thank
so
you.
like I love art but I'm not like I do more sort of abstract art. I don't have like I don't know, classic drawing skills or what have you, but the detail that you have in your characters and the way that you're able to get so like I saw, you have like the Grinch or you have like different Disney Pixar characters that you do.
Yeah.
And I love that you have like the videos on there, but like how do you develop that skill of being able to recreate that? That's something that in my mind is just so like boggles my mind that you can recreate that thing that you see to such a exact detail like that. Like what's that process like in transferring that thing from your brain of what you see in that image you have onto into sculpture?
Well, a lot of times, like with characters you were just talking about there, you get the 2D picture of them. So to make that a relief requires me filling in those gaps. Um, so a trick that I like to use is really harsh lighting. Like I'm working on a piece right now, and so I'll turn this light on, and I just push the clay around to get, my biggest tool is light,
Mhm.
uh, and finding the forms and just having the harshest lighting possible. Um, so like when I'm doing a relief piece like that, like a cartoon character or something, I have to fill in those details of, how deep his eyebrows are, how
Mm-hmm.
big his nose is, his mouth, like all those details. It doesn't always necessarily translate when you have just a 2D drawing. So it takes a lot of work to like, and playing around and just sketching and figuring out what looks good. Um, and that's the same thing with 3D too. It just 2D is a lot quicker. Like when I do the relief pieces, I just have a piece of wood and I start something and then I just stick it to the wood and
Mm-hmm.
then I just goof around and it's easy to go out in public and sketch and make like pins and earrings and stuff like that where you have the flat backs. Um, and that's how I start a lot of my mugs too is flat and then I'll, you know, when I get it to a certain point, I'll put it on the mug and then start that process. But um, it's just when you sculpt in 3 dimensions, you have to build an armature first, which is essentially a skeleton
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
that's rigid, so that you can have something to like. It's like your canvas, and then you stick the clay to that, and it holds its form and its shape. And because you got to fight gravity all the time. It's just like in stop motion. You're constantly fighting gravity, and you have to problem solve. And um, so like there's a clay on glass technique that I like to do in animation where there's a sheet of glass in front of you and you start animating on that in relief kind of fashion. So it's almost like 2D work, but it's still 3 dimensional. And you have different layers like Walt Disney had with
Okay.
his multiplane cameras. So I can still go in and animate like different things in the background or the foreground or, in the main frame there. And then you can still have like background elements. Yeah, it's interesting because there's a lot of just figuring stuff out when you're doing relief stuff, like you were just talking about with those characters, and that's a lot of the fun of doing the reliefs. Um, so I hope that answered your question
No,
Yeah,
there.
no, it's awesome.
yeah, I think that's really cool. I guess that's kind of why I love the videos that you make where you have some of those that you're kind of like showing the evolution of what you're working on because it's
Yeah,
or like seeing like the little I don't know, stick figure is the best I can describe it what it looks like, but the wire figure for the skeleton that you make and then fill it with the clay. It's really interesting to me to see that, and I just I love that you have those videos of like sort of watching the piece that you're working on sort of evolve and develop into what it becomes. It's like really fun to
yeah.
watch that. It's very cool.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. I do like a lot of story work, so
Mm-hmm.
it's not necessarily like I don't publish a post unless I get something that's like substantial. So a lot of like my in process stuff is in my stories. Uh, So like that's like the Snapchat and the Facebook and Instagram stories,
Mm-hmm.
so people can follow along if they really want to. Because I always get apprehensive about constantly posting every little detail about how something goes down because it might be really interesting to someone, but to me it's just like another boring thing.
It's just
So it's
part of
like,
what you're doing.
yeah. So I don't want to oversaturate, people with like every little detail on how I get to a certain place in a piece or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Very cool. So I know that this is like what you do full time, right? Like you don't, because that's that's one of the things that we talk about is like that's the goal, right?
How do we do that?
As writers. Yeah.
Why is that so hard?
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about like what was your sort of path to where you are now and being able to sort of full time do your craft? What was for those out there like us who are looking for, okay, if you can do it, there's got to be a way for us all to do it. What kind of tips and tricks might you have?
Lots of ramen. I'm just kidding.
Mhm.
No, I'm just kidding. There's so many people that say, or artists even that say you got to starve to be successful, or you got to wait to be discovered. And there's some truth to all that, I feel like, but um, definitely a lot of it is the work you put into it. At least that's how it's been for me, um, and letting your work speak for itself, and getting people, like, getting eyeballs on it is sometimes tough, especially in today's kind of like online world. Uh, that's why I like going out in public and like displaying or working in like a cafe or a bar or whatever, and just sitting there and working, and befriending the owners, and then letting them let me set up a table, and I just put a bunch of stuff, and people come over and look at stuff, and the work sells itself better than I even can, like, I'm not great at like pushing things or talking people into buying them. I just like explain process and stuff, and um, you know, usually I'll have something that catches their eye, or not a lot of people have seen a sculptor working live in person before, so it's unique, and they come up and talk, and especially when you're around a bunch of drunks, like, you get a you can get them talking pretty easily. So
I love it. And they're looser with their wallets, right?
Yeah, they are a little looser.
Put your beer in this.
Yeah, sometimes they'll buy you drinks and stuff, so it's kind of cool. But
so you kind of almost get paid twice. You get a free beer and somebody will buy a mug, right?
Yeah, that's the goal. Sometimes in the cafes and stuff, I'll strike up a deal with the owner and be like, hey, if someone buys a mug, first fill will be free, and I'll just pay for it later. So
nice, yeah.
Very cool.
Tie it all in. But the path to doing it full time has always been an off and on kind of thing, at least initially. And then COVID kind of happened, and
happened to everybody. Yeah. You had to get creative no matter who you were, it seemed like.
So ceramics and the pottery thing really helped me out during that time. But I used to be in the non-destructive testing, and so my old boss was.
What is that? Sorry,
you don't know? I don't know either.
I don't. What is that?
It's a day job, essentially. So it's using the theory of ultrasound to like look inside of welds for discontinuities or defects on wind towers mostly. And so it's something I did for a while, and my old boss was losing his business during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of other inspectors who were certified who were staying unemployed because there's benefits to that. And I was doing art full time, so he took me out to lunch a few times and kind of was like explaining to me he's selling his vans and his building and all this stuff, and he needed someone to go out on this contract. So that's what kind of led me back out here to South Dakota, because I'm from Colorado.
Oh, okay.
So that's what brought me out here, and then I made some good friends, and I have a good roommate, and the situation was nice, and my cat likes the city and everything. So
and it's important that our pets are happy.
Yeah. So I decided to stay, and but during that time is like I came out of, because I was doing art full time for 2 years, but I was still certified in NDT. So he asked me to come back and help him out, and I agreed, and it was a 3-month contract, but then that turned into a year, and so I had to, because it was just killing me. It was 14-hour shifts, and it was a lot of work, and
oh god.
and the work was just like, it was always very, you're on your feet the whole time, and you're very busy, and there's a lot of, there's a lot to that job and to that work. And I'm grateful for every day job I've had, and it putting that like eye of the tiger in you to keep fighting when you're off, to build up a body of work to where you're able to make a living off of it, which it's not easy to do. But it's definitely possible to sell enough to make a living. And with platforms out there like Kickstarters and Indiegogos and stuff like that, there really is a lot of tools that we have now that we didn't have like 20 years ago. The gatekeepers in a lot of these areas are kind of been quieted over time, and artists have more tools than ever with like Etsy and eBay. And I know sometimes it can feel like you're kind of floating around in the ocean, and you're waiting for like this big ship to come by and pick you up, and every other artist is out there floating with you, and it's just getting people to see you. And that can be kind of frustrating, especially if you believe in your own work and what you're doing. But definitely patience is key, and I picked a pretty patient profession with the sculpting and the animation thing. So
yeah, for sure. That's stop motion. You got to have patience to do that.
That day job just sounds like it sounds like an alternative like description of parenting, like non-destructive testing. It's just at least that's how I think of my parenting anyway. I'm just like, all right, I'm just testing this little thing out, trying not to like screw it up.
Let's hope this whole thing doesn't implode.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you've got some bigger responsibilities, I feel like, than I had. Yeah. There was very few lives at stake.
Yeah, all part of the inspiration though too. I mean, as a writer, I feel like I've grown in certain respects when it comes to just being a parent and having something to say, on those things. And that's really actually what I like about the business that I'm in is doing a personalized column. Is just so the more that I interview people and the more experiences that I can have, and the more empathy that I can dig into with other people, right? The more that you have to say, and so you are, like you said, you are you're thankful of all these experiences that you've had, whether they're day jobs or not, or anything else. Your experience just of what you've been able to have in your, I don't know.
Your experience does shape a lot of it's a resource to an extent, in terms of inspiration and just finding new ideas and cultivating a little bit of your craft, for sure. So I do want to ask, so you do seem to do a lot of like Disney Pixar characters. Are you like, is Disney Pixar just a big thing for you, or what's your sort of biggest inspiration for the kind of, how do you select what it is you're sculpting?
That's tough. I mean, I would say Disney himself is a big inspiration to me. I feel like he's a guy that I relate to more than anyone else in terms of like pioneering and forging. And he's got a really good story about how he was able to do a lot of those things with him and his brother. And like their upbringing and what led to, him getting into animation, and his setbacks that he had, and how he, was in the war, and started his business in a time like when literally there was none of this was even going on. And the only way you could get into seeing animation on any level was at movie theaters, and like begging the theaters to like put on a little show beforehand. And anyway, there's like he's got a really cool story about how him and his brother were able to build their business. And I don't know, I've always been really inspired by that, and then how he turned that from being like the idea guy and kind of directing, because he was never like a great artist himself, but he knew how to he knew that there was something here, and so he pursued it despite losing some very popular characters. And then when he got into the parks, and how he was able to build that whole branch of everything and how it all tied together, there's a lot of cool inspiration there that I value. So that's a big part of like when I'm picking a piece, it's not like I just do Disney Pixar. It's just like those characters are real relatable, and they're tough, and it's a challenge, and they're, it's just something that fun that I want to work on. There's plenty of pieces that I do as commissions or whatever that I don't ever even get to show because people want to keep them secret, or
Sure,
like
not
I'll
everybody
have
wants to share.
yeah, or have an NDA or whatever, and um, so I'm not allowed to like show some things sometimes. So a lot of the pieces that I do that I post about are my own pieces, and you know they don't all get produced. I don't make molds of them all and castings, and so it's all starts from just inspiration and fun, like something that I'll see something on a certain character that I want to try. Like with Hades, I really wanted to try hair made out of fire, and then both in sculpture and then painting that to see how that would turn out. And so it's a lot of it's just like testing and goofing around, and
It's kind of amuse thyself first is one of I think is like the biggest thing for me. Like as long as you're enjoying what you're doing, that really is always going to come through in your work. And I think that more than anything is what speaks to people, is if you're really truly enjoying what it is that you're doing, if you really have an interest and a passion in what you're doing, that's the thing that really gets people and speaks to people in whatever it is that is your craft, because the
or at
quality of
least the
what you do is,
perception of or at
yeah.
least the perception of that, right? Because I don't always, I'm not sitting there just giggling the whole time I'm doing something.
Oh,
It's a
I'm
lot
sure
of
there's a
it's
lot of cursing
frustrating.
and frustration that happens
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
I imagine that happens frequently.
Yeah. I definitely have to cover my cat's ears every now and then, because so
Earmuffs.
Earmuffs. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
so I don't actually know too much about you guys. Could you guys tell me a little bit about yourselves? I have not had a chance to look at any of your work, so I apologize for that.
Oh, no, you're
no
fine.
problem, yeah.
Shane, you go ahead and you start, since you talked a little bit
Okay,
about your
sure.
poetry.
Also, I was gonna I should really do something with I should try on the light or something. Like you have a
Oh yeah, I know.
great,
I have ring
bright,
lights. I'm
yeah.
a cheater.
And Mike's got this fireplace in the background. It looks like he's cozy, and it looks like I'm just
Yeah.
like in a basement, like trying to get out.
Do you need help? Like hold
This
up.
is just how actually I do normally have just one like little
Wear a yellow shirt if you
writer's
need
light.
assist. Like what was that whole thing with Brittany, right? Wear yellow if you need help.
Yes, yeah.
Oh gosh.
So yeah, when it comes to my stuff, so I've been a poet for a while, so I've always had an affinity for poetry, and growing up, it got to the point I had Hayden, my son, and so when he was born, it was like, well, okay, I gotta get a job now. So I, when I went back to school, non-trad, I'm like, okay, English is like the only thing I feel like I could push myself through. And, thankfully at USF here in town, they had a double like track for English and education. I'm like, okay, fall back teaching, I'm just going to go for it just to get a degree and just, figure it out from there. And then after my student teaching experience, just, the burnout rate for teachers. And I knew that the burnout rate for me would be so fast because I would want to be there. I want to be a good teacher. Like, for me, teachers were always so important, and to have a bad one or to have one that is burnt out or doesn't care does so much more damage than like 100 good teachers, right? Like to have a shitty teacher is like the worst thing, and I didn't want to be that. I didn't want to burn out, and I knew that I couldn't live off of what first teachers were making based off of how many hours I felt like I was going to put in, especially with a kiddo of my own, that I didn't want to neglect either. So
it's salary too, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's like,
okay.
Yeah. And I mean, when you break it down, like per hour, especially because you're going to be working at probably at least 60, with curriculum and grading and all that other stuff. I mean, it boils down to minimum wage, if that. So,
which is a shame. And we should, let's just insert a little pay teachers more propaganda, shall we?
Yeah. It's so crazy, especially in South Dakota. Like we know we've been last in the race for so long, and we're haven't done much about it, unfortunately. But so then in the meantime, I kind of kept on writing, kept on doing, my odd jobs and stuff. And I was telling Haleigh last time, so I had this, or I think the first podcast that we had, but I had this interaction with a lady in town. I'm a bit of a typewriter enthusiast. I fix them up to a point, and I collect them and stuff. And so I was actually collecting a typewriter, and it was her father's typewriter. And out of just this respect and this very cool interaction that I had, I'm like, well, can I write you a poem based on your father, because I'm inheriting his typewriter essentially. And so she sent over his information. I wrote a poem based on his life, and it was like this cool, super rewarding experience. This cool experiment of empathy that we both had. And I'm like, okay, if I can repeat this process, can I make this a business? Can I make this a living of some semblance? And so, from 2021, that's when I did the little LLC and got the name going. And since then, I've just been trying to get traction of like, okay, how can we use more of our words in a more deliberate way to, like, I don't know, make our lives matter, to remember our lives in a better way than we normally often do. I thought first, like, personalized obituaries was like the first thing that's like, okay, we gotta fix this, because I've been to too many funerals where they suck. Like I'm not getting anything from this person.
Survived by, let's just give you a data list, because
exactly, yeah. There's some funerals where it's like, yeah, maybe I couldn't tell a difference, but there were some funerals where it's like, okay, I know this person fairly intimately, and I'm not getting any, like, anything out of this funeral that would make it about them. And so I'm like, okay, first and foremost, this has to be better. And then I kind of opened it up from there on, where it's like, okay, any place in your life that you want to commemorate, that you want to remember, let's start there, and let's start with poetry, because we can concentrate something in a way where you can remember it. You can't read an entire person's biography and expect to appreciate it in really a tangible way.
Yeah, right? An essay is not quite as approachable necessarily.
Exactly. Yeah, Ben Franklin's a great dude, but I'm not even gonna read his biography. I'm definitely not gonna read it in its entirety. I'm gonna take like first and the last page and make sure you remember the kite scene. But so I'm just like, okay, the poem is like the best medium for like trying to boil this down, trying to boil life down into something. And I've always believed that poetry has that power. And so that's my stake in what I do, I suppose.
What's the name of you said you had got an LLC and you're starting that?
Yep. So the name of the business is Inknell, INK KNELL.
Nice.
And so the Instagram is ink.nell, website too, just inknell.com. Just finally finished my new website the other day, so that was fun.
Oh man, I gotta get a website, because I'm only rocking the Patreon and the social medias, and
You're better at social media than I am, so I mean that's something.
I do try to get that. I do try to get those things out there, because I know that that's a platform where people find, especially podcasts, things like this, and then they kind of like extrapolate out from there the other work that you do. So
how long have you guys been podcasting on then?
This is only episode 4, so you're in at the ground level.
Yeah,
Feel good about it. Be excited. You can be a return guest later and be like, I remember when you started.
I was in the top 5, starting.
That's right. Exactly. Yep. You can feel real special about it.
Yep, gold circle.
That's right. So I write a fictional podcast, The Adventures of Abernathy Franklin. I do other short stories and short fiction that I post on my Patreon, and I have like a Substack website that I post to. Sometimes I'm kind of trying to figure out what I really want to do is get more ebooks out and collections of short stories that I have. But I like to explore the realms of the weird and the multiverse and sci-fi fantasy type. And that's kind of what we talked about on the last podcast, was more my writing and my inspirations. I'm definitely into paranormal and the world of the weird, and cool. Any of the things that you're not supposed to look at, or any of the things that are sort of pushing the boundaries of what we believe is reality. That's kind of my wheelhouse. So and one of the things that I really want to finish that I'm working on right now is my kind of in the realm of obituaries, right? Straight from Death, which is the Grim Reaper is telling stories of her favorite soul collections, and they all are sort of tragic life stories at the outset, but then once everyone gets to their life review, once death comes to collect you, they recognize the value that their experience had and how they added to so much more of the people around them and just human consciousness as a whole, as a collective, that while you're in this human incarnation, while you're in this ego self, you don't recognize always immediately the value that you have to other people or what value certain experiences have to you. So I guess, for me, yeah, really very much into the consciousness, mixing science and spirituality, I guess, a little bit, and trying to do it in my fictional podcast as much in a fun and lighthearted kind of way as I can. The Straight from Death stuff is obviously a little heavier, but yeah, so and I guess that's kind of me too. In general, I love horror, I love true crime, but then I also love comedy and Disney Pixar movies and like ridiculous, outrageous comedy type things. So mix things. I like, get that juxtaposition in there. High contrast is kind of my thing.
Right. Yeah, Disney and Pixar actually does that really well. I always loved Hercules, so it's awesome that you bring up Hades. He was like always one of my favorite characters.
As soon as I saw that too, I was like, we dance, we kiss, we smooth, we carry on. Yeah. We go home happy. Like who? Oh God, who was it that voiced him too? I just love
James
that act.
Woods.
Yes. Yeah. So good. I love that. Let's put it out into the universe that I get somebody like that to start reading my Abernathy Franklin stories for me.
All right. Yeah, he's a great narrator.
Oh, I tell you, that's a hard thing too. As artists, it's like especially when you're just on your own, right? Like, so for me, it's like, yeah, if I had my druthers, I'd have somebody else performing this because I don't see myself as being like a voice actress or, necessarily having as much range as I would like to have my characters to have, right? So it's kind of one of those things when you're I don't know, an entrepreneur artist, when you're just kind of flying solo, that there are certain things that you kind of wish you had more collaborative elements available to you. Maybe is there anything like that maybe you run into with your animation, with your sculpting? Like, is there are there different kinds of artists?
Always voice acting and Foley or background noises or sound effects, all that stuff is definitely a challenge. So it's finding a good clip or something to animate to is fun. Sometimes there's a lot of math in terms of like figuring out where you're supposed to like sculpt a new mouth or when does a word start or stop or end or a certain sound or with the timing of everything. Like there's a lot that goes into a roadmap into figuring out a shot. But it's really rewarding when you can like fail a million times, then you get like one cool successful shot, and it's like
rewarding. That's the word.
Yeah. You cry from joy and just being proud and everything else.
And a little bit of relief, right? Like finally, it worked. So do you do with your animation? Do you also do like video editing? Like, are you using the video editing software to put together all the frames? And what sort of things are you animating for? Like, do you get any sort of do you get paid gigs for like animation type stuff?
Yeah, I've had a few gigs here and there. I've been offered roles on movies and TV shows.
And have turned them down?
Yeah, I've turned them down.
Can I ask what's the matter with you?
It's just family at the time. It was like, it was, and also they don't pay much. Like I made so much more in NDT. It wasn't even like fair. But it would have been fun for the experience and stuff, but it just wasn't practical because they didn't pay for moving. One of the jobs was in United Kingdom working on Chicken Run 2.
I mean, cool. Yeah, that would have been fun, but shit, if you're not making money at it, that's come on now. I would have thought that would at least pay better than working for a welder or something.
Well, it was Chicken Run 2.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. They don't have Mel Gibson back either for Rocky, which is kind of a bummer. But yeah, that's coming out on Netflix later this year, and I've had some small gigs and stuff. One of the big reasons I didn't do it is I was scared of it becoming a day job, and if it wasn't something um, that I was wanting a story I wanted to tell, or certainly there's value there and an experience, and um, you know, definitely you can socialize and make some good friends in that world, which thankfully online I've already done a lot of that. But it's I was just scared that if it became a day job and it started to become something I disliked, you know, if I'm clocking in and clocking out every day doing that, that was something that kind of made me hesitate a little bit. So
No, I totally
uh,
understand that. So once upon a time, I had a business selling hand dyed yarn. I still am like a big knitter, and I dye yarn myself for like myself to knit things and crochet and make things. But that was why I stopped doing it, because you have to. I was doing it dye to order, because that's how you have to make money basically when you're doing yarn. You have to dye what people want. It's not just like, here's my inventory. If you really want to make an income at it, you have to just let it be like, here's this particular color scheme, whatever that I have. They order it and you dye up however many they want, and
yeah,
it became more of a chore than a joy anymore, and so that's why I don't do it anymore. So yeah, I totally get that. Like, that's another, I guess, sort of danger of the craft, right? Like, anything can
yeah,
turn into a day job and a drag if it's not in the right sort of space for you to be able to really enjoy yourself
yeah.
and thrive.
I agree. Like a lot of my business is reproduction work, and it's something that I have to have my fingerprints on every single step. Like it's not just sculpting the piece; it's making a mold, um, and then pressure casting resin in, and then cleaning all the resin, and then painting all the resin, and then making them whatever they are, whether it's a magnet or whatever else, and that doesn't even include the pottery side of everything. Or there's a lot of reproduction work. So like you see the one Hades head, for example,
Mm-hmm.
but for each one I sell, I don't post about it every single time.
Mhm.
So
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of that time and behind the scenes of creating new pieces is reproduction and like making the same thing over and over and over.
Mhm.
Um, so like sometimes it's nice to do like an army, like do like 10 of them and then have 10 available. But it's just like, it's good for like conventions or going out in public and stuff. But doing the made to order stuff is like such a bummer to me because you know, I'm grateful that it's selling and people want it and stuff, but it's also like, oh,
I gotta make
I don't
another one of
I
these.
don't have I don't have, a Pac-Man.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
now I gotta go make a mold, cast
Figure
it,
that
paint it,
out.
do the whole
Well,
thing again. So
I wish there was more of a I don't know, a courtesy, or at least I wish more people knew about that courtesy, and maybe more it's an artist thing. But as an artist, like whenever I go to buy or purchase something from an artist, I'm always like, I will purchase like give me whatever is your favorite, or if you're gonna make me something that you want to make, or just get like crazy with it. And that's just because as an artist, I know that that is going to be the best piece, and it's going to be the most fun for the artist. And I don't know, I feel like that's just. I hope more people come into that common like courtesy thing when they deal with artists, because it's like this is part of like our livelihood, but it's our passion. So can we meet halfway and be like, I'm going to give you
Mm-hmm.
something of quality if you believe that. Just let me have fun with it. And I know that's what I try to do with when I purchase other things. So
no, that's cool. Yeah, it's one of those things too where people they'll want something specific, like a sculpture of their kids or their grandparents or whatever, and then or a certain character even, and then as you're doing it, they become an art director all of a sudden, and they
Yeah,
right.
want a million changes, and it's
I want this different. Can you make it a little
yeah,
more like this? Can you do that?
yeah. It's
Yeah,
like
I
oh,
imagine that would get really tiresome.
uh,
Which
it's
it's
it's it's
it's good
it's
for
something
the,
you have to accept, but
yeah.
it's not fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you've never done any of this, or you would be doing it, and now
Right.
you're
Right.
telling me how to do it. So
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
it's a little bit frustrating, but you gotta take it all in stride and vent about it later with your buddies. So
Yeah, that's why you end up at the bar, right? Like,
yeah,
but it's okay
it's
because
like,
then
man,
maybe you can make a couple of other extra sales while you're there.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, or just wallow away your sorrows. So
Yeah.
So how much of your work is like the selling of the physical products, and then are you do you have any projects that like of the video side that you're kind of doing on a regular basis or anything? Because I just thought too with those bids per se, I wonder if they would be more attractive to you and if they would allow it. But just like the Pixar movies, right, where there's that little short before each movie, like if they would
yeah,
allow you to do that, that'd be really cool. Be like, I'll do this project, but then let me do this, like 15 minutes short beforehand, at least get my stuff out there too.
yeah, that's kind of unprecedented, because they have so many people doing those. So it's very rare they would put, all that faith onto me, and I wouldn't have time to work on the movie anyway doing that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
uh, it's it's a thing, like, the stuff I've done with animation has been like, little bumpers, or for like safety videos, or
Hmm.
you know presentations, like where you'll have certain things animated, or like a few little commercials in Colorado here and there, but
Gotcha.
nothing like local commercials. So
Yeah.
it's nothing like crazy yet, but um, it's definitely, I want to start telling stories, and I want to be able to develop a style, which is what I'm working on currently,
Hmm.
on how to animate faster, but still
Yeah.
have like, really good results, but it still be clay and stop motion. And, I don't like the paper mouse, like Robot Chicken, um, that's effective and it's really fast because you just, replace the mouth or whatever. But
Hmm.
to me, it doesn't, and it's smart to do that because you save money.
Yeah.
The animators are working less, you're spending less on them. But and you're saving time, but it's just not fun to always look at. It's good for like the quick jokes and stuff like that. But if it's a story you're trying to, like, I don't know, I kind of go back and forth with ideas on how I want to do all that. But it'll definitely be in a kind of a clay on glass kind of 2D style, and I want to tell stories like that, and
Hmm.
have like a narrator, so I don't have to have so much lip sync work. And you know you look at a lot of the animation that's coming out these days, and it's all, it's built to be, it's all built for like computers, and for speed. It's all built to, it all caters to speed and getting it done very, very fast,
Hmm.
like South Park and Family Guy and all these
Yeah.
things where there's very little in a scene that's actually moving or being animated at any given time. um, which that works, and it's interesting, and it's a lot of it's voicing and good sound effects and music and stuff like that. But the animation part of it to me kind of falls like to fourth or fifth on the list of things. um, and I kind of like that look of the animation being unique on every frame, not
Yeah.
A
not
little
just,
closer to maybe Nightmare Before Christmas, right? Like really leaning
yeah,
into it.
yeah,
Yeah.
like Paranorman or Nightmare, or
Yeah.
a lot of those things. Some of that's what I appreciate with some of the old Disney animations, and just the animation work back then in general. Like, I forget the name of the two brothers, but they did like Popeye and
Hmm.
Fleischer Brothers. Like a lot of their cartoons where everything was like really rubbery,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
like Popeye and Olive Oil and all them always had like really, like, there was no bones or structure to them. It was just always
Yeah.
flowing. I've always
Very fluid
appreciated
and
that.
floppy.
Yeah. They just have these
Yeah,
like little bumps for knees and
Hmm.
elbows, but
yeah.
otherwise, yeah.
Yeah.
They would just like suggest things,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
and I like that power of suggestion. And in animation, it's really beautiful if like you can capture that. It makes it fun to watch. You don't even have to know what's going on in the story or whatever. It's just fun to watch and fun to look at.
That's kind of that's what I love about like old sort of 80s and late B horror movies and stuff where you have like I I get what you're saying. Like, the CGI and the computer generated like things that you do, like, yes, they work for speed and they can be really you can get these really great sort of epic, expansive scenes and what have you, but there's something very homogeneous to all of it, right? That is a little bit boring to me. And so like that's something I love about like old monster movies, or like when you have it's a little bit hokey the way that they put it together on the screen, but just the prosthetics and the claymation and the things that people had, like someone had to build that, someone had to do that makeup, somebody had to create that little, creepy spooky little character, in I can't even remember, I can't think of what it is, but like weird little devil characters that I'm imagining from some terrible B horror movie that I watched that I thought was like, oh my God, those things are so cute. Like I know they're supposed to be terrifying, but I love it.
Yeah,
So I get that.
Yeah.
The practical effects, bringing up Jurassic Park again, that was one of the cool things about that movie is before because that was the first time they really used CGI for anything, right? So they actually hired Phil Tippett, who's a big time stop motion guy. He actually did a lot of the shots in stop motion, and you can still go online and find those tests that they did with the T-Rex, because the dinosaurs in that movie were all supposed to be stop motion before they went to CGI. And so they took that process really far. Like they had a full T-Rex puppet, they had the raptors in the kitchen, they had all that stuff all done in stop motion, and it was beautiful. But then they decided to go the other way with it, and obviously change the world and everything. But that whole all those up close shots of the dinosaurs, they still used a lot of practical effects. Like the Triceratops, there was no CGI there. Like that whole scene with the sick Triceratops was just a big puppet, and with it breathing and everything, like that kind of stuff just stuck out to me so much as a kid. And the practical effects, I mean, they're such a powerful part for something, for like even the actors when they're acting to it, or
yeah,
not just a
having
green
them
screen,
right? That they're interacting with something, and there's something a little bit more to that scene when that happens. Yeah, and
it becomes more of it becomes a performance again instead of just a production. If there's a difference enough in those two words. I just took my son to Jaws at the state yesterday, and that was awesome again. But I mean the shark, right? I mean, just like he's watched probably a dozen like newer shark movies where it's all CGI, got this big shark, like similar stuff going on, right? But Jaws is scary because it is so like real, and I don't know if they obviously they made the whole shark, I'm sure, and blew the budget or whatever, but also part of the story, like part of the story is the suspense leading up all the way to the end of the movie, where you never really see the shark until like the last 20 minutes, and then they just like blow it out of the water. And it's just it's cool to make movies like that again. In Jurassic Park too, that you bring that up. So I had the pleasure of gosh, I think it was a couple years already, but they had a few of those shows where they would have the symphony, the South Dakota Symphony, do the music for it. So they had it showing at the Washington Pavilion, and I went to Jurassic Park, but then they had the symphony do the background music, and it's a completely different world, right? Because you got the suspense, the music, you got everything coming at you, and it's like that's what it's all about. That's the performance of of something like that.
I love I have to say, like, because of Jaws, I have to watch every like horrible bad shark movie there is. I had like I have a fascination. I have to see all the bad shark movies. I just love shark movies. I'm also, I don't know, I think I just have a monster movie fetish just a little bit, like any, Lake Placid, big one for me. So but
I'm pretty excited about Meg 2 coming out in a couple weeks.
We are too.
Yeah.
He eats a dinosaur in the trailer, and to me that's like
right.
pretty awesome.
Bring together that Jurassic Park and Jaws world, right?
For sure.
Like one of the cool things too about the practical work is you get to see like some of the passion and the abilities of the guys and gals who like sculpted the puppets, and they get to have a part and a say in the scene, and it's cool to have that underlying element of their creative process. And I think that just helps the actors and everything else. So I think it just adds to the magic of a cool movie,
Right.
No, I definitely agree with that, and that's again why the older movies where it's a lot more of that practical and the like Dolls is one of my favorite old B horror movies. I don't know if you know Dolls, but
I've not seen Dolls, but I can imagine
oh, I
about
laughed so
Dolls.
hard, even though it's a horror movie. I just love it so much. And that probably says a lot about me, but that I laugh at a
What
horror
is the
movie.
basic plot of the Dolls?
So these like a bunch of strangers accidentally end up because of, bad weather at this spooky old mansion where, creep ass Mr. and Mrs. Witchy type looking people have a house full of handmade puppets and dolls that come alive and murder everyone. And it's so
That sounds awesome.
fantastic to
Yeah.
Mhm.
see like the stop, like watching an actress that gets stabbed to death by a bunch of tiny stop motion dolls is, it gives me so much joy. I have to laugh at it. I know it's a horrible scene, but
I'm
it's
gonna have
just
to watch this because it
it's
sounds awesome.
fabulous to watch. There's a scene where this gal's eyes supposedly fall out and she picks up like these eyes to put it like
That's sweet.
it's great. Again, shouldn't laugh at it, but it's something about there is something to that the practical effects that it gives me so much joy. I have to giggle. I don't know.
Yeah,
I just like it.
like Gremlins. Like
Yes,
Gremlins is another. It's like yes.
absolutely.
Or like the first Evil Dead with the stop motion and that.
Yes.
Yeah, First Evil Dead
Yeah.
is good. Yeah,
Oh my gosh. Oh, so many classic movies I'm gonna have to go watch now.
I know.
Just enjoy myself.
Binge
Yeah.
some Bruce Campbell.
Have you guys ever heard of Ray Harryhausen? He's like one of the pioneers or the father of stop motion is what a lot of people refer to him as.
That
He
sounds
I
did
have
like
familiar.
what's his yeah.
he did like Jason and the Argonauts, like with the Cyclops, or some of the old dinosaur stop motions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
he did the skeletons fighting the human. I don't know if you guys ever saw that
Yes.
in Sinbad.
Yes.
I
Very
think it's like
cool.
from the 40s or something,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
Okay.
Like super old school.
yeah,
Again, the
that
things
kind of
kind of
stuff
like
just
from film school that I've forgotten about.
yeah, that stuff was just. I mean, he's been a huge. He just recently passed away too, which is a
Oh,
bummer.
wow.
Yeah, he lived for a while, but and
Because
also
when
Will
you
Vinton
follow
just
your
passed
passion,
away, which
age
is sad.
becomes something that's not an issue.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
So
it
again,
lives on.
may I again just plug our Patreon. Please visit all of our Patreons, and so that we may, live longer lives following our passions, and we appreciate you in advance.
Yes, support
That's
art.
sorry, I'm the plug person here.
That's all right. Yeah, somebody's got to do it.
Yes,
If
somebody's
we
got to
don't
do it.
promote ourselves, who will?
Yeah, it's a longer process for sure if you don't help that along. But
Yeah, I forget half the time I have like any of that stuff. People ask me, it's like, well, where are you? And I'm like, oh yeah, I do have a website. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I
Go
should
check it
tell
out.
you.
Like I don't know. It's
websites are so 2005, man.
I know, right? Yeah.
You gotta get an Instagram and an OnlyFans these days.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
You know what? The people on
Connect them.
OnlyFans be buying houses already, so it's got to be doing something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is. I appreciate the hustle anyway. If you can create stuff, I guess
Yeah.
it's all creation, I suppose. But
Yeah, I guess to some extent it is. But
but
so for you then, like what is it, are you really just less of the marketing and really the sort of is that just kind of going back to, again, how do you do this and this is what you do, like how much sort of balance do you have to have in that selling of the products being out in public or is there, I suppose a lot of it's trial and error, but have you found a formula that you can share, I guess is the question.
well,
Yeah.
it's
Can I have the cheat code, please?
I wish I had it. I mean, I swear to God, I'd be helping everyone. But it is so much of it is learning about yourself and what will work and what won't work, what can sell, what won't sell. Sometimes I'll love something I'm doing, but it just won't translate into sales. And, you know, I may have had a blast doing it, but that ultimately doesn't really matter if I can't sell it. So a lot of times I'm balancing what I think will sell with, something that'll lead to a sale on something else, or, I'm trying to get more into t-shirt designs right now, so I don't have so much reproduction work. Stickers and stuff are always something I always kind of give away at conventions. And I want to try and get in more of there's so many print on demand options. And t-shirts are a great way to, like, if you go on Etsy and just look up some shirts, like basic shirts with like very little design or text or graphics or anything, and they'll have 75,000 sales or whatever.
Doesn't that drive you just a little bit crazy? Because I do have an Etsy too, where for a while I was trying to do my own website with Shopify and stuff like that, but it just got to be like, the monthly fees were too expensive for, just not getting enough sales. And it's like, man, hi Kitty. I put more, kind of effort into probably a design than I probably should. It's kind of that overthinking thing, because that's really at the end of the day kind of not what people are looking for, and that is a little frustrating sometimes when I see like you just put like some text on a t-shirt that is something that people say generally, and how do you have all these sales from that? Like,
yeah, it's inspirational, I'll say, because I hate to say frustrating, because I am happy for that person and they figured out some little slice of success there. So it's hard to hate on that, but
got to celebrate them if you want it, kind of thing. The mindset situation.
Right. Yeah. So it's one of those things where I look at something like that and it's like, okay, that's inspiring. And then, you look at some of these Kickstarters and stuff where, like, a lot of my buddies that I used to do the art show with, I used to do this art show on YouTube, and we would all work, and it was just really a way to get everyone to just sit down and work, and we'd have like a live chat going and everyone would be talking. But anyway, a lot of those guys in that group were all comic book artists, and they would all have like these ideas for comics and stuff, and we would always look at these Kickstarters, and they were making like, some of these comic books went up to $2 or $3 million, and it's just like, it was just mind-boggling to me. Like,
yeah, geez.
And you would like look at, I'm not to say the art is bad, because that's all, that's not for me to decide, but it didn't blow me away necessarily. So
it's, it's kind of, where is that sweet spot of how do you enjoy what you're doing and also catch the attention of an audience, so that you really run with the idea that you have,
Yeah. And I do think a lot of that is putting yourself out there and being a little more vulnerable. And, I do think people like seeing that the artist side of life, and that they're not perfect and they're not just having a blast all the time. And there's a lot of hard work that goes into every creation that anyone creates, It's
you have a visitor that likes to keep hanging out.
Whenever I sculpt and stuff, she's got to be like right here on my lap, and so she's trying to get into her little spot.
It's nice to have a
block
coworker
her the whole time. Yeah.
I wish my dog was always trying to hang out with me when I was recording. She sits by my feet, but she's like, yeah, that's close enough. And I'm like, oh, come on.
Oh, that's cute. Yeah, she's like ripped up the whole back of my chair.
Oh no. You can be on the podcast too. It's totally fine.
Yeah, right.
Oh, she's cute. She's my little angel. But yeah, there's definitely so many just tools, I think, is the biggest thing. And a lot of those comic book guys were, some of them were inkers, some of them were like pencilers, painters, the word guys, I don't even know what they're called, but
yeah. I know what you're talking about. I don't know what the name is. I don't know what the name is either.
But there's all these different elements to a comic book, and on these Kickstarters and stuff, they had all those like different people collaborating and stuff, and they're bringing their buddies on essentially, and making $1 million, $2 million, and having to fulfill only 100,000 books or something, which with the print on demand world, I mean, there's a lot of like tools for all of us, really. I mean, and we don't have to do like so much reproduction work.
There's a lot more collaboration available in the internet world, right? And that's kind of a little bit part of the goal of our podcast here, kind of how do you create a community and get the right people to connect with whoever they need to connect with, and collaborate with the people they need to collaborate with. Like, you never know who's the right person you're going to meet. And, it's so just sort of trying to be a little bit of that bridge, or sort of facilitate the creation of a community, to get people's stuff out there, get out what you do. And who knows who might see you, who knows who might, well, we talked to this person on the podcast who does this bit, this would be great for you. And just because I think that community and that collaboration, and sort of being more in a mindset of working together instead of competing with each other, right, as artists.
Yeah, for sure.
And let's do this together and support each other, and we can all get to that place of being able to do what we love, and let our passions support us, and really be in thriving mode rather than having to be in survival mode all the time.
Yeah. That's one of the things I was curious about with that Kickstarter stuff. And I actually did some of the, I did some sculpture work, or I made little figurines for a stop motion movie one time for a buddy, and just like a different reward tier. And I did some minifigures for another buddy for his comic book. And
I have ideas in my head already for little things that I've wanted to. So like I've been looking at those like Doodly. I don't know if you've seen, there's Toonly and Doodly that are like programs where it's like the automatic animation kind of thing. It's just somebody drawing it, sort of, right? It's like a AI type program almost. For just like, because I would really, that's in my mind, the vision that I have is that my fictional podcast, right, The Adventures of Abernathy Franklin, would be an animated series. Like that's in my mind, like where I would love for it to go. Like I think it would be really fun as an animated series. But there's even just little, like I have little goofy sort of short ditties that I'm like, I would love to make these little shorts of like these little things that I think of in my head that, again, amuse thyself first, I think are funny, that I think if I could animate them, would be something that might draw people in, so if you start, if you would start like a YouTube channel, maybe, and have like shorts or whatever that could like draw people into more of your work, and, get more of the Patreon subscribers, YouTube subscribers, whatever it is, kind of thing. Like, So we'll have to chat later. I have a little like poem sort of ditty thing in my head that I'm thinking of, that I'm like, I would love to see this as a stop motion animation that I think would be very, in my mind, it's very sort of simple and silly, but it's, so that's,
simple and stop motion are not,
they
together.
don't go together. Yeah. I know. They're not synonymous.
But that's what I'm trying to, my goal is I'm trying to like make those words coexist a little more. So
yeah,
that's something I'm trying to develop. So yeah, we'll have to talk for sure. But
very cool.
Actually, I gotta go.
I was gonna say no. We usually do keep it to like around an hour. I want to be respectful of people's time, because I know as an artist who has to work full time still, my time is certainly very valuable to me. So thank you so much for being on and having this conversation with us. It's been a lot of fun.
Yes, thanks for having me on.
And we'll definitely
meet you guys.
Of course.
Yes, and I'll definitely put all of your links in the description for people to find your work. Be able to go buy your mugs and your products, check out all the videos that you have. So yeah,
awesome.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Haleigh. Thank you, Shane.
Yeah, of course. Take care.
Thanks. Hi again, friends. That was our conversation with sculptor Mike Fleming. We've got all of Mike's links in the podcast description, so you can find him all over on Instagram, on Etsy, and his Patreon. Do go check out his stuff. It is really amazing art. His videos are very cool. I do hope that you enjoyed this conversation that we had. If you'd like to support more podcasts from No Small Stories, you can find us on Patreon, patreon.com/NoSmallStories. You can also follow us on Instagram at No Small Stories Podcast. You can also find all the information to find Shane online, inknell.com and ink.nell on Instagram. You can find me at patreon.com/Abernathy Franklin for my fictional podcast, The Adventures of Abernathy Franklin, as well as some other short stories that I write. And you can find me on Instagram at h.overseth. I've got all the other links below, so you can find us all over the web, wherever you'd like to. We do thank you so much for joining us. Do follow us, subscribe to the podcast, like, share, leave a comment, tell your friends. And if you're someone who is an artist, an entrepreneur, a small business owner, we would definitely like to talk to you. So thank you so much again, everyone, for joining us on this week's episode. And remember, no matter how small you start, your story is always a big deal to us. Take care, friends.